Welcome to the Green Building Show, where we investigate green design and building trends throughout Australia.
In the lead up to the long-awaited Christmas holidays, we're going to have a look at some DIY projects that you can do in and around your own home. We're going to kick off our DIY series with an interview with Dale Dixon from Sydney's Royal Botanic Gardens. And he's going to argue why you would get a native garden, what are the benefits, and how you can create one in your own home. And in this week's Australian Style, I'll speak with Andrew Webb, the director of architectural firm WD Architects in Queensland. And they've created a lightweight home which is so energy efficient, it not only got an 8-star rating, but actually earns the occupants money. Hi, I'm here with Dale Dixon. He's the manager of collections at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Sydney. Thanks for being with us, Dale.
You're welcome.
So we're talking about a DIY native garden. Can you give us the argument for pro-native over exotic? What are the advantages of developing your own native garden, Dale?
That's very interesting. I think for me and for anybody interested in native plants, you've got to remember that if you choose an Australian native plant for your garden and you choose correctly for the area you're wanting to develop, then the species are already pre-adapted for your conditions. You know, lots of Australian species have evolved to harsh conditions, survive with low water and high light, depending on where they come from. So the argument is easy if you ask me. There's an Australian species for every situation in your garden. You just got to know what your site is. Okay, great. And you say they're well adapted to the Australian conditions. What are the advantages of planting a plant which is already adapted to our conditions? What's the advantages? What are the benefits? Well, if you can consider we need to reduce the amount of water that we're using because water is a precious resource, then lots of Australian species can survive on very minimal amounts of water and even survive long periods where you may not be able to water your garden if you do have to go on to water restrictions. Once they become established in the garden and you provide them with adequate protection in the forms of mulches, they can survive. And what about other things such as fauna attraction or ease of maintenance? Do you have an opinion on those aspects? Well, native plants will bring back to your garden all the native birds, from honey eaters to insects to insectivorous species. They'll bring little mammals back to your garden, perhaps. They'll bring reptiles, lizards, hopefully not snakes, but probably. And these can all be a benefit because they will help you in the maintenance of the garden. They remove pests, insect pests. You know, insectivorous birds will remove insects that can damage your plants. Native nectar-feeding birds will pollinate your plants, and your garden will just be a much richer place that you will enjoy. Fantastic. And what about people who may think that a native garden is not as aesthetically pleasing or as colourful as perhaps an exotic one? What would you say to convince them otherwise? I'd say that they haven't gone to a native plant nursery and really looked at the variety of plants that you can actually get now. It might have been different 20 and 30 years ago when I started growing native plants in gardens and there wasn't a lot available and native gardens did get a bad rap. But today, if you go to a native plant nursery, there is a plethora of species available for just about any situation that you've got in your garden, and some of the most spectacular flower colour, leaf texture, leaf shape, leaf size, form, habit that you can dream of. Great. Okay, and so give us a bit of an example garden, if you will, for say a Sydney sort of temperate climate. What would be a good mix of plants to give it that aesthetic appeal, exclusively native, but still have some colour? Really, really hard question to answer, Carlos. I really think that a person or the gardener needs to take into consideration their site first. So there's no one fit for every situation. So a person needs to look at their garden, their yard, and look at and get to know the site
intimately, look at the aspect. Where does the morning sun fall? Where does the afternoon sun fall? You know, where's the afternoon sun, so that you can think about what plants you're going to plant that get the hottest sun of the day. And once you know that, you can begin to select the plants that will benefit in your area. For instance, you wouldn't choose a shade-loving fern and plant it in an area that gets the hot afternoon sun. You know, I mean, you're just inviting trouble. And that's where I think people have got the wrong idea with respect to native plants. They think that they're durable, they can plant anything anywhere, but just like any other plant, they have their conditions that are beneficial to their growth, and you've got to provide those sorts of things when you're planting an Australian garden.
Okay, great. And just on the planning, without repeating yourself, I suppose, but what is the biggest consideration a homeowner needs to take into account before when they begin their native garden project?
Well, I think they should just do a little bit of research, and there's lots of different sites. Go onto the Australian Native Plant Society website. They have articles on there about different genera of plants that you can put in your gardens, about planting design, garden design. Look at how the water runs off your garden, because you're obviously going to be planting a garden around a house, and the roof area of a house collects a lot of water that goes down your gutters and your drain pipes. That's got to go somewhere if you don't actually collect that. Look at how that interacts with your garden, because you don't want to plant things that require minimal water where they're going to get lots of water. Look at what is beyond your boundary and try to plan to blend in or contrast with what's beyond your boundary as well. And I think that's quite important too, because we live in smaller and smaller blocks of land, and you can use to your advantage what other people have put in their gardens as well as a backdrop.
Great. And talking about beyond boundaries, what do people do if they're in a bushfire zone? Does native flora have any impact to their bushfire danger or bushfire risk?
Yes. Well, look, I think if you are in a fire-prone area, you need to really make consideration, regardless of whether you're growing native plants. Certainly, native plants can cope with fire, and that's part of the reason why they're well adapted to our garden situations. So if you are in a fire-prone area, you need to leave a bit of a gap between your garden and your built structures. You need to plan ahead with respect to bushfire season and make sure that you do all the right things that are proposed for those areas. Keep your fire breaks clean, keep your gutters on your house clean, maybe install some sort of irrigation system on your roof to help fight any blowing embers. But keeping plants well away from buildings is a guide for any area that's fire prone, regardless of whether you're growing native plants or exotic species.
Yep. Okay, last question, Dale. I guess what's your strongest argument, if you could wrap up in perhaps one sentence, what's your strongest argument for creating a native garden rather than an exotic garden in a homeowner's?
If you haven't been out to the Australian bush and spent some time just walking around and seen the diversity of plants, the form and colour, the shape, the texture of the leaves, then you haven't been out in the bush too much. And until you do that, you can't appreciate it. But when you do, you just want to grow these plants. They are just some of the most spectacular things that you can grow. And there are plants from all over Australia that will suit any situation in your garden. I guarantee it.
Dale Dixon, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
It's nearly Christmas, Vic. What's hot in the gift department?
Carlos, I was thinking with 12 days of Christmas, we could look at 12 eco-friendly gifts for under $50. We may not have time to go through them all now. So, gifts under $20. Number one, for a mere $1.65, you can get this fantastic wooden kaleidoscope from organicpartybags.com.au. Great, eco-friendly, safe for kids. Also from Organic Party Bags is this organic chocolate box for $2.75. Fantastic. Moving on, for $5.50, the People and Planet Diary 2012 from stateofgreen.com.au, where proceeds go to 49, I think, different not-for-profit organisations. Eco Coffee Cup, there's loads around, but these ones from latestbuy.com.au are really cool for $14.95. And then there's what these people at urbanities.com.au are calling the sturdiest and most eco-friendly notebook ever, made from limestone and a non-toxic resin. It's $15. And finally, these are bamboo curvy servers from stateofgreen.com.au for $20, and of course bamboo is a great renewable material. So yeah, 6 products for under $20, eco-friendly Christmas gifts.
I'm here today with Andrew Webb. He's the Director of WD Architects in Queensland. Thanks for being with us, Andrew.
No worries.
And we're here today talking about the Schlager residence in Noosaville on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. So tell us, Andrew, how does this? Why did you decide to go with lightweight materials, and how does it really suit the local climate?
Well, the site, we had a flood level that we had to work to, which is about 1.2 metres above the natural ground, and then the ground conditions it's really soft sand, so we've got screw piles going very deep into the ground, so lightweight was the way to go. We still achieved an 8-star rating, even though we couldn't have any thermal mass inside. It was just too heavy for the conditions.
Okay, and what were some of the? You mentioned it got an 8-star energy rating, which is quite impressive, especially with no thermal mass. What were some of the challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the biggest challenge was the orientation of the block was quite poor. So it was about 28 degrees off of north, and we angled the roof so that it's actually perfectly true north to maximize the efficiency of solar panels on it. It has a big solar array on it, and then the cross ventilation and daylighting and all those things were developed from responding to the site, doing sun studies and various things to work it out really to maximum effect, even given the poor orientation.
Okay, and by having these efficiency systems in place, how does that benefit the occupants of the home?
Well, they're exporting 4 to 5 times their power consumption back to the grid, so it's essentially a carbon positive test, and that's from just internally being very energy efficient. In terms of heating and cooling, there's really none needed. They do have a fireplace for more for ambiance, and then it's LED lighting throughout, and every appliance and anything that draws residual power can be turned off at the wall.
Okay, so when you say it's
do that.
Okay, great. So when you say it's carbon positive and its power consumption is going back to the grid, how much money do you think the occupants are actually spending on power, if any?
Oh well, they're getting paid by the supplier.
So they're actually making money.
Yeah, and that was measured in the first 3 months of occupancy through winter, so it should be only better in summer, which we're just going into.
Fantastic.
So.
Andrew Webb, thank you for your time.
No worries.
This week we've got a question from Josh, and he's asked us to help him track down an expert who can help him with a home in Perth which suits the climate and the weather. Well, Josh, I would recommend getting in touch with Light Home Design Ambassadors Penny Sutton and Peter Yongen. They specialise in sustainable and lightweight construction throughout Western Australia. You can check out their latest Ambassador's Choice on the Light Home website, where they've profiled a lightweight and sustainable duplex complex in Albany. And remember, if you have any questions for us here at the Light Home team, make sure you get them in to editor@lighthome.com.au.